Hey, I hope you guys are doing good today. We are going to be watching some tasting history with Max Miller, one of our favorites. And we are going to be going into the Titanic series because I have been really wanting to watch these. So we are going to kind of, work our way through this series that he has here. So we're going to start with Dining in Third Class. I think this was like the first one, so I kind of want to watch them in order. So we will be going through this series. I think it's going to be really cool. I always thought the Titanic was kind of awesome. So, or just like a fascinating story. Like the boat is amazing. It's beautiful. The story is just tragic and just really just fascinating history about all of it. So if you do get a chance, I'd appreciate if you can leave a like and subscribe. It helps me out a bunch. And I will have Max's video linked in my description below. So be sure to go and like his videos, subscribe to him, all that good stuff. He makes amazing videos. So please go and subscribe to him. But all right, let's see what it's going to be like dining in third class on the Titanic. All right, before we get started, who is behind us on this one? I have absolutely no idea. This one's really cute though. I really like this one. I have seen though in Vegas, they have a whole Titanic exhibit that you can go walk through and like I guess you get a ticket and you're supposed to be like a passenger on it and you get to go through the exhibit and see stuff. I really want to go and do that. That's been like one of the things I want to do.
Welcome to Titanic Month. Yes, not one episode, but an entire month of episodes dedicated to the food and experiences aboard the RMS Titanic. We're starting with the third class experience with this recipe for rice soup, served as the first course for dinner on the day of the disaster. Then
Oh, on the day of the disaster. Oh gosh. This looks pretty good though. Rice soup. It sounds good. It sounds like something I would enjoy. Is this like gonna have like a chicken broth base or something? Because I'd be down with that. I mean, this looks creamy and like kind of cozy, so I think it's gonna be good.
this recipe for rice soup, served as the first course for dinner on the day of the disaster. Then we'll work our way through second class, the crew, and of course, first class. And there are so many stories that I've found, and I want to share as many as I can, so we'll also probably throw in a couple mini episodes in addition to our normal Tuesday episodes.
Oh,
Titanic
nice.
Month starts now, this time on Tasting History.
On his captions, or I don't know, there's like a Wikipedia here on the video, and it says that it sank on April 15th, 1912 in the North Atlantic Ocean. Gosh, I remember the movie and I remember learning about it in school, and I always thought this was just like really kind of very interesting history.
So I have two major goals with this series. First is to finish my Lego Titanic and
Oh my
find a place to
gosh.
put it. The
I've seen this one in a hobby store. There's a hobby store I go to where sometimes I like to get Gundams. I like to build Gundams. That's a side note. But they did have this one, and they also have like a really, well, I guess it wasn't a Lego one. There's like a Titanic replica, but I think it was like a model because they have like a lot of model boats and stuff that you can build, and like cars and all kinds of things. But I remember seeing the box for the Titanic. It's huge. Like that thing was huge.
I have two major goals with this series. First is to finish my Lego Titanic and find a place to put it. The second is that by the end of the series, we will have created an entire meal of several different courses inspired by the menus from April 14th, 1912.
I love this idea. I think this is gonna be so cool. I can't wait to see all these. I think this is gonna be really cool. I love this idea.
Several different courses inspired by the menus from April 14th, 1912, the last full day that the Titanic sailed 110 years ago. And most of the dishes are
That's like cocky leaky.
the last full day that the Titanic
Cocky leaky. What is that? What is that? I don't even know what any of this stuff is other than this corned beef, vegetables, and dumplings thing. I the rest of this I have absolutely no idea.
sailed 110 years ago. And most of the dishes are going to be from the first class because they were just more exciting, but since today we're talking third class, I figured we would start off with the soup served to third class passengers for dinner on that day.
Let's see. It says rice soup, fresh bread, cabin biscuits, roast beef, brown roast beef and brown gravy, sweet corn, boiled potatoes, plum pudding, sweet sauce, fruit with this is this all of this for dinner? This looks like a lot, or like, do you get to choose what was off of this maybe? I don't know. This looks like a lot of food though. It sounds delicious though. It all sounds good.
Now the problem is that while we know the names of a lot of the dishes that were served on the ship, we don't have any recipes, so we don't exactly know what they were making. So I'll have to refer to period cookbooks to figure out what the recipes might have been.
Hmm,
Like this recipe for
fair.
rice soup from Eliza Acton's Modern Cookery for Private Families. Throw 4 ounces of
For private families? What is that? It's a like what does that term mean? I want for private families. That sounds so formal.
Eliza Acton's Modern Cookery for Private Families. Throw 4 ounces of well-washed rice into boiling water, and in 5 minutes after, pour it into a sieve, drain it well, and put it into a couple of quarts of good white boiling stock. Let it stew until tender. Season.
What is considered white boiling stock? I don't some of these terms, I swear, I feel like I have no idea, and I always learn something new from this, which is good, which is a good thing. I feel like if this is not too crazy, I could see myself eating this a lot. What we got salt, cayenne, and pounded mace. I feel like I could see myself eating this a lot. I love rice. If rice is included, I'm sold.
Into a couple of quarts of good white boiling stock. Let it stew until tender. Season the soup with salt, cayenne, and pounded mace. Stir to it 3/4 of a pint of very rich cream.
Ooh.
Give it one boil and serve it quickly. So while this may seem kind of basic, it's actually a lot more exciting than the other period rice soup recipes that I found, all of which were just rice and stock, and that's basically just rice. So for this recipe, what you'll need is 2/3 cup or 105 grams of long grain rice, 2 quarts or 2 liters of chicken or veal stock,
Okay.
a large pinch of salt, a 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper, a 1/4 teaspoon of mace, and a little bit less than 1 cup or about 225 milliliters of cream.
Oh yeah, this is gonna be delicious. This is gonna be so good. I still need to get mace though, so I can try it. That is still on my list of things to try because I don't think I've ever really used that seasoning before, and I feel like we see it so much in all these videos that I I I just need to get some.
A little bit less than 1 cup or about 225 milliliters of cream. So first, rinse your rice. Then she says to throw it into boiling water, but because I didn't want first-degree burns, I went ahead and placed mine into boiling water. Let it boil for 5 minutes and then pour it into a sieve. Then bring the stock to a boil and put the rice into that. Then turn the heat down until it's just simmering and let it simmer for about 45 minutes. Now while it cooks, I wanted to call out one of the main inspirations I had for doing these episodes, and that is the book Last Dinner on the Titanic. I
Oh,
was obsessed with this book when it came out about 25 years ago, and I
what does it say?
on the
Menu and
Titanic. I
recipes?
was obsessed with this book when it came out about 20.
Menus and recipes from the Great Line. Oh, I bet this is so cool. I bet it is. I'm sure I could probably still find this. I bet he loved this though. I bet he absolutely loved this book.
25 years ago, and I am still somewhat obsessed with this book. Now, I think it's out of print, but I'm going to put a link in the
Oh,
description to where you can get it used, as well as a link to many of the other sources that I use. And just in case you never look down there in the description, I always list to a lot of my sources, different ingredients, as well as my social links, Reddit, Discord, as well as my Patreon, which, other than watching the videos themselves, is the best way to support the channel. So
heck
make
yeah.
sure to always check it out.
Yes.
Now, you're going to want to keep
Yes, make sure to always check descriptions. I always read his though because it seems like there's always something in there that's always really useful or like when he has the recipes and stuff in there. So
themselves is the best way to
do
support the
recommend.
channel. So make sure to always check it out. Now you're going to want to keep an eye on the soup as it boils because it
Don't only use my description to go and subscribe to him. But other than that, it's just a bunch of gobbledygook in there. I'm trying.
it can all pretty much boil away and then you'll just have rice. So make sure to keep an eye on it, and if it does look to be getting too low, then just put the lid on. But while it finishes simmering, let us take a gander at the third class experience on the Titanic. Now, I don't care what class you were, whether you were fresh off the farm or dined nightly at the Ritz. In 1912, the RMS Titanic would have been a spectacular sight.
Oh
By the
yeah.
way, RMS stands for Royal Mail Ship, and the Titanic did
Oh.
carry mail. But at nearly 9
I didn't know that it carried mail. I actually didn't know that. I thought this was like a cruise liner almost. Let me see. There's something else. I had no idea.
The RMS Titanic would have been a spectacular sight. By the way, RMS stands for Royal Mail Ship, and the Titanic did carry mail. But at nearly 900 feet long, the biggest ship of its day, it carried a lot more than just mail. 75,000 pounds of fresh meat,
Oh.
25,000 pounds of poultry, 11,000 pounds of fresh fish, 7,000 heads of lettuce, 40 tons of potatoes, 36,000 oranges, and 13,000 grapefruit, which is about 13,000 too many in my opinion.
I like grapefruit though. I don't think that's so bad. I wonder how much food are on like those huge cruise ships now though. I would love to see that grocery list because that's like a whole crew that you're feeding. I don't know how many people are on a cruise ship nowadays. I don't know how many people like what's the max uh occupancy for that, but I would love to see what that like grocery list looks like. But this is a lot.
And 13,000 grapefruit, which is about 13,000 too many in my opinion. 250 barrels of flour, 800 pounds of tea, 40,000 fresh eggs, and 1,200 quarts of ice cream. 15,000 bottles of ale, 1,000 bottles of wine, and 850 bottles of liquor.
Is this what they were transporting, or is this what was going to be fed to people, or is this both?
Now, this huge quantity of food and drink was necessary because the ship could carry up to
Oh my
3,547
God.
passengers and crew. Though on its maiden voyage, there were only about 2,200 people, 709 of whom were third-class passengers.
Only 2,200. Oh, only 2,200. That's still like a crap ton of people, though.
Only about
This boat's huge, though.
2,200 people, 709 of whom were third-class passengers. Now, if you were one of these third-class passengers, then your ticket on average would cost about £7, which would be about $1,000 today, which
Oh,
doesn't sound like too much for a transatlantic crossing, but at the time, that was about 2 months' wages for the average third-class passenger.
so that was a big deal. That's 2 months worth of wages for a single person to go. Like I would say, then that's a pretty big deal. That's a lot of work.
At the time, that was about 2 months' wages for the average third-class passenger, but you got a lot for your money. In my view, nothing approaching the accommodation has been experienced in any of the previous journeys, and nothing but a pleasant voyage is anticipated.
Oh, that's like a really sweet entry about this. What are like third class? Who would be considered third class? Like farmers and stuff? I guess I'm not sure because I feel like I get first class and second class, but third class would I like who is in that who's in that bracket of third class?
Though before you board, you need to undergo a physical examination from the ship's surgeon, Dr. William Francis Norman O'Loughlin, and his team. This was because for the vast majority of third-class passengers, this was meant to be a one-way ticket to America, where then they would start a new life. And American
Oh,
immigration
right.
required them to go through this examination before boarding. These regulations were also why the third-class passengers were not able to gain access to much of the ship. They were meant to be kept separate from the first and second class passengers, and sometimes this was done with gates that were occasionally locked. Though these gates were not locked on the night of the sinking in an effort to keep the third class down. It just happened that they were often locked.
That's kind of messed up. Oh my, so you're like trying to like you gotta put them in like their own separate area, and I don't think you gotta lock it though. That seems a little harsh, but I guess everybody's trying to go get a better life in America, which is cool. Like that that's definitely pretty cool, but the gate thing seems a little extreme to me.
The third class down.
So you
It
can't
just
like
happened that they were often
intermingle, I
locked.
guess.
Now, once you were on board, you'd probably head straight to your cabin, and for third class passengers, you had two options. You may stay in one of the 84 two-berth cabins, which included electricity, a wardrobe, and even a sink with running water. Or there were also larger cabins with up to 6 bunks, and these were meant for
Oh
either large
wow.
families or more often for single travelers of the same sex. Now,
These kind of like freak me out. I don't know if I could have done this. I mean, I guess if you're really trying to get to America, that's fair. But uh, if I was doing this for leisure and this was where I had to sleep, I don't know. This might freak me out a little bit. This might make me a little uncomfortable.
families, or more often for single
More power
travelers
to
of the
'em.
same sex. Now, this was quite luxurious compared to other ships of the day, but it is still third class, so their placement on the ship wasn't the best. They were usually either at the
Oh,
back or the
yeah.
stern, or the very front of the ship, or the bow. And those are not the best places on the ship because those are the places where you feel the most movement and vibration from the ship. When I
Oh god, so would they, fall out of bed or something? Or would it just be, turbulence the whole time? Because that would kinda suck too. And it's probably louder. I don't I would imagine that I mean, this is from 1912, I don't think their engines were probably super quiet, I feel like if you go on a cruise ship now, you probably don't hear anything, hardly ever, unless you're, outside or something. But 1912, I bet that mofo was loud.
places on the ship because those are the places where you feel the most movement and vibration from the ship. When I worked on a cruise ship, my cabin was pretty much all the way at the bow, and I can tell you, you better like the feeling of being rocked to sleep at night. There were
Oh my
also
god.
two
Oh, no. That's cool you went on a cruise, though. I mean, this looks better if this was his room. This looks cozy, and this looks better.
and I can tell you, you better like the feeling of being rocked to sleep at night. There were also two baths for third class, just two. Most people washed in their room, just in their basin. But if you wanted to take a bath, they did have two of them, one for men and one for women. And I can venture a guess which one had the longer line.
Always. Some things never change, I'm telling you, man.
And one for women, and I can venture a guess which one had the longer line. Now, even though you're barred from most of the ship, the parts that you do have access to are really quite nice. For a bit of entertainment, you can go to the general room. It is paneled and framed in pine and finished enamel white with furniture
Ooh,
of teak.
that looks
This will be
nice.
the general rendezvous of the third class passengers, men, women, and children, and will doubtless prove one of the liveliest rooms on the ship.
This is I mean, I don't know if this is, a good, uh, concept of it, but if I'm sure it's probably, somewhat close, but this looks kinda nice. It looks nice. I don't think this looks bad.
The new field of endeavor is looked forward to with hope and confidence. The interval between the old life and the new is spent under the happiest possible conditions. Well, the happiest possible conditions were probably a few decks up in first class,
Oh,
but
yeah.
even so, it was very nice. The room had a piano, and it was a place where passengers often gathered with their own instruments to play live music and hold dances. Now, if you wanted a little peace and quiet, and you were a man, then you could go relax in the third class smoking room. With linoleum floors, oak paneled walls, and a bar that served ale and beer, it was a cozy place to smoke and play cards.
Did women just not smoke during this time, or did they just have to be outside or something? Because, obviously, these men can come in here and smoke, but, did women just not do that, or did they just have to go somewhere else? Like, their own section, maybe?
In a bar that served ale and beer, it was a cozy place to smoke and play cards. The chairs were designed to be more comfortable, but just like in the general room, they would have been made of wood and not upholstered. And this was because, despite your checkup with the surgeon, it was just assumed that all third class passengers had lice. Now, if you wanted a bit of
Oh, that's kind of like a harsh generalization. Oh, man. Even if you didn't, they're just gonna assume that everybody I mean, I know lice was, a big problem back then, but that's kinda damn. Oof.
it was just assumed that all third class passengers had lice. Now, if you wanted a bit of fresh air, you had a few places on board where you could go feel the ocean breeze. There were several spots to promenade, but the main third class area was at the back of the ship on the poop deck. It isn't funny, it's French. Poop deck comes from the French word la poupe, which referred to the
La
stern
poop.
of the ship. Originally, it was an elevated level at the back of an old ship, and it was there to protect the stern.
Anytime I hear poop deck, though, I always hear swap the poop deck, and that's all I can ever hear. I can't unhear that anymore.
Originally, it was an elevated level at the back of an old ship, and it was there to protect the stern from being swamped by large waves. But as ships got larger and didn't worry about big waves, the poop deck lost its real necessity, and it made it so that the Titanic was actually the last ship to be made with a true poop deck. So you've got your accommodations, your place to relax, but as anyone who's ever been on a cruise knows, the most important thing is the food. And on the Titanic, the third class got food, which seems like a no-duh kind of statement, but not long before, that wasn't always the case. Many times, the
Oh.
third class had to bring not only all of their own food, but their own cutlery as well.
Oh my god, so, like, what if you didn't bring food? Is this what it would everyone just start fighting and trying to, like, steal food from each other? Because I could totally see that happening. Like, if it looks like this looks like chaos. I mean, this looks like a child on the ground and people fighting and pushing and this other kid just trying to get a drink. Like, if that was what it was like, oh man, I bet that was a fun trip.
Times, the third class had to bring not only all of their own food, but their own cutlery as well. But not on the Titanic. On the Titanic, even the third class food was first class. We had a grand time on the Titanic. We got very good diet and had a very jolly time dancing and singing. We had every kind of instrument on board to amuse us.
I love that. That's like such a it all these entries about this seem like they're just so wholesome. I love that.
Jolly time dancing and singing. We had every kind of instrument on board to amuse us. Where you ate was in one of two dining rooms on F deck, which was separated by the watertight bulkhead. The two saloons extending from ship's side to ship's side, well lighted with sidelights, and all finished enamel white. The chairs are of special design. The position of this apartment, i.e. in the center of the ship, illustrates the wonderful strides made in passenger comfort in modern times. Together, the rooms could accommodate 473 people, so you'd be assigned one of two seatings. As you entered, you'd likely hang up your coat and hat on hooks along the wall, which were decorated with posters of the White Star Line's
Oh, I love this. These the posters from this? Oh, I love this. I love art
coat and
from
hat
them.
on
It's just like it's so cool. I mean, I love art through, I guess, all of time. It's just like such a cool progression and just how different everything is. I don't know. I just love all of it.
hooks along the wall, which were decorated with posters of the White Star Line's ships and ports of call. Then you'd sit at communal tables of about 20, which were lined in linen, and you would be served by a steward. Your food coming in on white china featuring the White Star Line logo. And you'd know what your options
I
were
like
ahead of time
this.
because every day the menu was printed on a card in German, English, Finnish, and
Oh.
Swedish. And there were 4 meals a day: breakfast, dinner, tea, and supper. On Titanic's final day, breakfast consisted of, among other things, oatmeal porridge and milk.
Is that what British people call lunch is tea? But sometimes I get confused because I know I've had like British people come in and be like, "Oh, I just had tea," and now or like I'm gonna have dinner. And I always thought they were the same. So is tea like lunch? Is that what I'm understanding now? Please help me. Please help me.
On Titanic's final day, breakfast consisted of, among other things, oatmeal porridge and milk, smoked herrings, jacket potatoes,
That sounds
ham and
pretty
eggs,
good.
and plenty of fresh bread, butter, and marmalade with tea and coffee. Dinner, being the main meal of the day in third class and served around noon, would have started off with the rice soup that we're making today. After that, you'd have roast beef and brown gravy, sweet corn, boiled potatoes, and plum pudding with sweet
This
sauce
all
and
sounds
fruit.
good.
For tea, it was cold meat, cheese, pickles, bread and butter, stewed figs, and rice. And while pretty much everyone had an afternoon meal called tea at the time, the way that this tea happened was very different depending on your place in society. In 1914, a book called The Whole Art of Dining contemptuously described this version of tea. The tea of the English working class is the most eccentric of meals, and one of the greatest injuries a gourmet can possibly conceive. This incongruous kind of food may no doubt be quite nice and tasty for this class of people, but it must shock anyone endowed with refined Epicurean instinct.
So tea was a very fancy time, I'm guessing. Is that why they call it high tea here? I don't know. Or is that a universal term? I would love this. I mean, it sounds like it's just a nice time. I might be a little too low class for this, but this sounds like a nice time.
Well, I think it sounds just lovely. Less lovely sounding was supper, which consisted of gruel, cabin biscuits, and cheese. Now, gruel gets a bad rap, and one of these days I'll do an entire episode on gruel, but in this case, it was probably similar to oatmeal that you made just using way too much water. And the cabin biscuits were a fancier version of hardtack. In the lifeboats, they had a less fancy version of hardtack called Spiller's and Baker's Pilot Biscuits. So the meals were simple, but they were filling, and they were probably a lot better than most of what the third class was accustomed to. And
It's probably better than nothing, because like, what if some of the other ships that those other people were going on that you didn't get any food? So I would say this is, I mean, like, yeah, it's probably basic and it's feeling like he said, but at the same time, that's probably leaps and bounds better than nothing for days on end. I would say. I would say, yes, I would probably eat this and not complain.
they were probably a lot better than most of what the third class was accustomed to. And White Star Line even made an allowance for kosher meat supplied and cooked for Jewish
Oh, wow.
passengers as desired.
That's
And
nice.
any complaint respecting the food supplied, want of attention, or incivility should be at once reported to the purser or chief steward. For purposes of identification, each steward wears a numbered badge on the arm. Now, supper ended at 10 o'clock, and if you were like most people on that April 14th, 1912, you probably went to bed shortly after. But at 11:40 p.m., you would be rudely roused from your slumber. There were 4 of us sleeping in the same apartment. We had a bed of our own, and in every apartment there were 4 life belts, one for each person. At the time when the ship got struck, I heard a terrible noise. I jumped out of bed and told my comrades there was something wrong, but they only laughed. I turned on the gas, and to my surprise, there was a small stream of water running along the floor.
Oh my God. That would, oh gosh, that's like the one thing you don't ever want to see. It's just, like a random stream of water running into your, like in your room anywhere on a ship. Yeah, I would say this is like the like worst case scenario. And this is like before you even know anything has happened.
The gas, and to my surprise, there was a small stream of water running along the floor. I had only just dressed myself when the sailors came along shouting, "All up on deck, unless you want to get drowned." That was third-class
Oh my
passenger
God.
Daniel Buckley, and he was in one of those forward cabins. And if you were up there, you would have likely felt the iceberg as well, and very soon afterwards seen water on the floor. Many of the men up there felt it and put on their lifebelts right away and headed down what was known as Scotland Road, which was a long corridor connecting the front to the back of the ship. They went back to the third-class smoking room, which was all the way aft, but many of the men who were back there hadn't really felt the iceberg and definitely hadn't
Mm,
seen any water, and so
right. Yeah, because I mean, this ship is so big. Yeah, I wonder if they just thought maybe it was like a little bit of turbulence or something, if they even felt anything at all. Oh gosh. I wonder if they went in there and told them that like we gotta go because we are going down. If like even they even believed them.
who were back there hadn't really felt the iceberg and definitely hadn't seen any water, and so they weren't taking it seriously. They
Mm.
mocked the men for wearing the lifebelts, and there were stewards who instructed the men to actually remove the lifebelts. Now, while the third class was not forced to stay
No.
below decks, they were encouraged
Oh my God, can you imagine? Can you imagine being wrong about something like this or like think somebody's joking and it turns out to be true, which in this case it was? Oh man, no. Mm-mm, no. Gosh.
actually remove the lifebelts. Now, while the third class was not forced to stay below decks, they were encouraged to stay in one place and await further instructions from the crew. But as the crew went out onto deck and started loading lifeboats, they got distracted and never went back down to tell the third class passengers
Oh
what to do.
no.
And by the time the third class passengers realized this, it was too late and the last of the lifeboats was gone. Though Daniel Buckley, having seen the water in his room, did not wait for instructions. I went on deck and met a sailor
I don't blame him. I wouldn't either. I'd be like, let's go. Let's go. Let's go. There's water in my room and it's not supposed to be here. People are screaming. It is time to go. Yes, it is time to leave. We are abandoning ship.
the water in his room did not wait for instructions. I went on deck and met a sailor who asked me to help him lower the boats. The sailor said, "Take a chance yourself." I did, as did my friend,
Oh.
but the officers came along and ordered us off the boat. A woman said, "Lay down, lad. You are somebody's child."
Oh my gosh, that woman. all of this is just, I mean, this is amazing. It's great that we got to hear like this kind of account too. But like how this sailor is like telling him to leave and then this lady is basically hiding him. Oh my gosh.
Off the boat. A woman said, "Lay down, lad. You are somebody's
Oh,
child." She put a rug over me and the boat went out, so I was saved. Gershon Cohen, another third-class passenger, said that he didn't have a life belt in his room, but he wasn't that worried because when he went to the general room, everyone was dancing and singing and nobody seemed that worried. It was only when he too went out on deck and saw ice all over the place that he realized the gravity of the situation.
oh God. I can't even like I when you read about stuff like this and see it and hear it, it's like it's bad, but I cannot even try to put myself in these people's shoes to try to comprehend like what this must have been like or how this must have felt or just like the pure terror and how horrifying it is. I think one of my biggest fears is like not that I don't think I'll ever be in the situation, but having something go wrong in the ocean because it's not like land where you can just be like, okay, well, like we just gotta like, survive and like, we can at least walk, like whatever. But like the ocean terrifies me like that, where it's like that is probably one of my biggest fears. I don't think I'll ever be in a position where like this could happen, but being stranded in the water or like having some sort of like water accident or anything like that and you are kind of going down and there's not much you can do and you're going to be stuck in the water, that like terrifies me.
And saw ice all over the place that he realized the gravity of the situation. He actually climbed up onto the first class deck and started searching for a life belt, which took him 30 minutes before he found one.
Oh my
I had
gosh.
just put it on when the boat tilted right over and a lot of people fell into the water and were drowned. I clung to the railings of the deck for dear life, and I was about 200 feet above the level of the water.
See, like that I feel like would be so traumatizing to see people falling into the water when the boat tipped like that and basically people just falling to their deaths. I feel like that'd be so traumatizing.
Clung to the railings of the deck for dear life, and I was about 200 feet above the level of the water. Also below him was the very last lifeboat leaving the Titanic, and he tried to get on it by jumping out 5 feet to the lowering rope, but the rope cut through his gloves and his hands,
Oh
and he
no.
too fell into the water. After being 5 minutes in the water, it seemed hours, I was dragged into the last lifeboat. There was nearly all
Oh.
women and children and 3 men. I was given one of the oars to pull the boat. We had to pull very hard because the Titanic was sinking and suction would pull us all down.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that too. Yeah, like they're all like pretty close like while it's going down. Oh my gosh. Well, at least that last boat pulled him in and then he was able to help, but like I cannot imagine this scene. Like as much as I've seen um like accounts and movies and stuff like that, I feel like it still probably doesn't do it justice of like how scary this was and just how just like horrendous of a incident this ended up being and just seeing so much uh, people trying to escape and people in the water, people falling off the boat and then like who knows, who's still left in the boat. I mean, this whole thing is just it's so crazy.
We know a lot less about what was happening on the Titanic during the very last minutes, but there are a few stories from survivors who were pulled from the water. One tells of a third-class passenger running through the general room on his way to try to get out of the ship, and the room was empty except for a woman and her young child. She was
Oh my
sitting at the
gosh.
piano, playing and singing a song to her child, trying to keep them calm, she being resigned to their fate. Now, of the over 700 third-class passengers
That is so heart-wrenching. Like that story is so heart-wrenching. I think that scene is in the Titanic, isn't it?
resigned to
I
their
haven't seen that movie in forever, but you want to know how old I am? I remember seeing this in theaters and you had to take like an intermission break while they changed the reels to watch the second half of it. And then when it came out on VHS, if you know, you know, it was 2 tapes.
fate. Now, of the over 700 third-class passengers, 536 died that night,
Oh
more
my
than any
gosh.
other class. Though it was actually the crew that suffered the most loss, and we'll do an entire episode covering the crew at large. But in the next mini episode I'm going to talk about one crew member specifically, the baker, this guy from the 1997 movie. But before we move on from third class, I wanted to tell one more first-hand account, and I was actually not going to because it's really strange and can seem almost callous. But after reflecting on it, I realized that it shows an aspect of humanity that none of the other accounts have. It's a letter from Bertha Mulvihill to her sister Maud, and Bertha wrote this on the Carpathia, which was the ship that picked up the survivors after the actual sinking, is when she's writing this letter. And I don't know if she was in shock or just disbelief or what, but it's fascinating. Dear Maud, experience is great. I'm fine and dandy, never better. What time did you hear of the disaster? I am so glad I was in it. I shall never forget it. I never saw such a sight as when the dear old Titanic sank. She broke in 2 pieces. The scene was awful. Don't think me mad for being so happy to witness the sight. I am awfully happy, like the night I was born. Never felt happier in my life.
She is our first thrill seeker. I'm convinced. I don't know if this is like brash necessarily or harsh. I think maybe she didn't live in a very exciting life and this is like a whole experience like she kind of says in here. Maybe she lived a pretty mundane life and was just like, I'm going to get on this boat and it's probably going to suck. I'm gonna make it to America and just, like try to make a better life for myself there, but it's not really gonna be great. And then this whole thing happened. I mean, I guess there's maybe just a mixture of a lot of emotions that she didn't really maybe know how to put into words right. But at the same time, I feel like Chick's kind of a thrill seeker, and I ain't hating on it. This is kind of a wild one though. This is definitely kind of like an outlier here.
Go figure. Now, I could tell countless stories from the third class on that fateful April night, but as it happens, it's time to spice up our rice soup. So once the rice is nice and
Oh,
soft,
this
add
looks
in the salt,
good.
cayenne pepper, and the...
I got so invested in these stories, I forgot we were making soup. I totally forgot about the soup. I was so invested in these stories that yes, I totally forgot we were making soup.
our rice soup.
This looks delicious though.
So once the rice is nice and soft, add in the salt, cayenne pepper, and the mace, and then pour in the cream. And stir it while you bring it back to a boil for 1 minute. And then it's ready to serve.
I think this
And
is gonna
here
be
we
good.
are, rice soup as served to third-class passengers aboard the Titanic. It smells really good. It's so interesting because it's kind of soup and it's kind of porridge. It's like in this kind of weird middle place.
See, I was gonna say that too. I was gonna say it kind of reminds me of porridge, but then I thought I'd be wrong in saying that because I've never really had porridge. But I feel like that's what it kind of looked like to me, or like the texture of it. So I'm actually really glad he said that because I was thinking that in my head when I thought I was gonna be like way off base.
kind of soup and it's kind of porridge. It's like in this kind of weird middle place, especially once you add the cream. But let's give it a shot.
I think it's gonna be good. Gonna be cozy.
Hmm. Oh, weird. Interesting. So the mace really hits you first. It's that and the chicken stock. Those are the dominant flavors, which is interesting for a soup or any kind of dish. It's an odd combination. And then after a couple seconds, you don't get the flavor of the cayenne, but you get the heat of the cayenne, which is really interesting, especially from food of this time period. You don't really think of it as spicy, but it is. I have to say, it's weird, but it's also
It's
good,
weird.
and wow, it would be so filling. And it's
I do agree with him. I think it would be really filling. It doesn't seem like a bad meal, but I don't know. I still kind of want to try it though. I think it looks really cozy to me. Like I could see myself eating this for lunch when it's like snowing out or something.
weird, but it's also good, and wow, it would be so filling. And, it's the first of quite a large meal. But the meals after this, we're going to cover the other classes, they get huge. This is a
Oh,
tiny meal in comparison to
oh
what
my
we're going to
gosh.
cover in future episodes. So I hope you're as excited as I am about Titanic Month. I've wanted to do it for a very long time, so I'm very glad that it's here. And I will see you
Yeah.
next time on Titanic Month on Tasting History.
I thought this video was great. There's like so many stories that he was sharing that I was 100% invested in these stories. I loved these stories so, so much. I should really look into more of them and see what else I can kind of find on my own to watch because it's been a while since I really dove back into like Titanic stuff. And I do remember really enjoying learning about it and kind of doing like my own research and reading. And then I watched the movie and then um, I watched a lot of documentaries that had come out about it too, like around that time. So this is like kind of like a nice little like like I don't even want to I don't think throwback is even like the right word, but like a revisit to this and in such a different angle of I get to see like more food related, but I will say I was so invested in the stories that I totally forgot that we were making the soup, but this soup looks delicious. I feel like this is a cozy meal, like a cozy lunch that you could have. I'm gonna have to add this one to my list of stuff to try when it gets cold. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I really appreciate you guys being here. Be sure to go and like and subscribe to Tasting History with Max Miller because he does just such an amazing job. And I love these videos so much. I learn so much. I feel like I get so invested in these videos. Like I'm like just so into them and like learning and everything. And so really just go and subscribe to him. He's just awesome. But that's gonna do it for me. I hope you guys had a great day and I will see you in the next one.